If you want to learn more about how you can max out your damage output in Where Winds Meet, then this video is for you. I'm going to be highlighting a handful of tips and tricks on how you can make sure you max out your damage across the board regardless of what your build is. And I do want to call out too that some of these may be beginner friendly while others are a little bit more advanced, so be sure to check out the timestamps and jump around to the topics that are most important to you. So with that being said, let's jump into the very first thing, which is under the Develop tab. And I just wanted to call out the importance of the arsenal. More specifically, the fact that you can actually choose a specific path that correlates with your build. If you go under just a general build, you may not get as much of an impact towards your specific build if you are utilizing two weapons within that same tree. So for example, I'm using the Immortal Rope Dart and the Twin Blades, which is both in the Bamboo Cut family. So I want to make sure that I am following that path, which will increase my overall mastery and my overall damage output. Additionally, as you can see on the right side, as we continue to progress our character, we will unlock different levels of arsenals. Within here, we can basically drop in gear that is associated with that level. And what you really want to focus on is putting the highest mastery possible in these slots. By doing so, your overall mastery is going to increase, and you will also have an increase in some important stats. So for example, I will be increasing my min and max bamboo cut attack, which is perfect for my build. With that being said, do not hold on to any specific tuning materials. You really want to make sure that you max out all of the gear within each level threshold as much as possible. If you have like purple or gold attuned items, kind of like this one right here, make sure you actually use them all and don't just sit on them, because you will be able to use that gear once you hit the next breakthrough through your arsenal. So keep that in mind as well, because it will impact your overall damage numbers. Next up, I wanted to talk a little bit more about consumables. Now, most of us probably are already aware that we can set like certain HP related items for auto use so that you can restore HP when you're outside of combat. However, there are other items out there that actually can have an impact on some battle-based stats. So there are a handful of scripts that can provide with some certain stats like endurance regen and things like that. But more specifically, there are some certain items. Let me see if I have an example right here that boosts your overall physical attack. So for example, this one increases physical attack by 20 to 40, but there are other items that can go upwards to 100 additional physical attack. So be sure to grind out the recipe and the items in order to cook as many of these as possible to boost overall damage numbers. Next up, as you continue to progress your character, you will eventually unlock the Divinecraft menu right here. When you click into it, you will quickly realize that there are 3 different elemental Divinecrafts that you can upgrade and utilize within combat. What I highly recommend is that you upgrade all of these if you can, because they all serve a different purpose. For example, in my opinion, the Poison Divinecraft is probably one of the best ones when it comes to DPS users, because it can lead to additional HP damage and just bonus damage in general. Plus, as your character progresses further, you can also upgrade this to deal even more damage over time and just boost your numbers when it comes to damage output as much as possible. There are other options here as well, but for in my opinion, Divinecraft Water is more so used when it comes to tankier builds or maybe healers. And then this one can also be useful as well, but as you see, you can lead to like additional explosions and stuff, which tend to be well in kind of like group-based combat or AoE damage and things like that. But regardless, it is worth taking a look at this menu because it can lead to additional damage output. Additionally, what I wanted to call out, and I mentioned it before, is just the overall importance of tuning. If we go into our inventory, you can see that there are a handful of different perks on each of my items. You can acquire these through the tuning process, and each perk basically has a different role. Now, yes, I am a bamboo cut user, so that min bamboo cut attack right here is probably better when it comes to being compared to this one. However, even though I'm not utilizing Bell Strike attack, this still does have a general impact and boost my overall damage output, so it's not awful. I do, recommend trying to boost, the min and max of physical attack and the specific martial art that you are focusing on for your build as much as possible, because that will push the overall damage numbers even further. And I know it's pretty straightforward, but just as a quick preview as well, when it comes to tuning gear, again, I highly recommend that you utilize these items that guarantee gold or purple as you are progressing your character, because they are stuck to that specific level threshold. So it's not like I can hold this level 41 sword and use it to tune a level 61 sword. It doesn't work that way. It's level specific, so make sure you are using these. There's no real purpose on hanging on to them long term. The actual attribute that you pick up through this tuning process is a bit randomized though, so it will be a bit of a grind to really kind of max out and get the perfect piece that you're going for. There is a specific setting in the game menu that you want to make sure you have, because it does lead to additional damage output. So if you go to settings and then game and scroll all the way down, this auto use Divinecraft tool is typically on close, but you can enable it, especially for boss battles, because it will auto use these different Divinecrafts that we talked about previously, right here, to pick up those additional damage boosting numbers for your character. So again, if you do not have that setting marked in as on or enabled, you have to manually use these items, which is a bit of a lengthy process. Plus, it's a lot just to kind of go between those Divinecrafts and your potions and things like that. So you want to make sure it's on auto use. Plus, it's super easy to farm those different materials. I mean, I could probably get a stack of like 9,000 of them within just like an hour of grinding. So I wouldn't stress too much about not having them or like using too many of them. But if you are cautious, you can always just turn them on and off before boss battles and important fights that may be a little bit trickier long term. So keep that in mind as well. As I'm sure many of you are already aware as well, there are of course a handful of talents that will basically allow you to deal more damage depending on the perk. There are enough talent points today to really max out every single one of these different options, and a lot of them do have direct impact on your damage numbers, so be sure to max this out as soon as possible. Additionally, there is a whole separate talents tree when it comes to specific bosses. So for example, if you're struggling to defeat the Void King, consider doing this in multiplayer mode and just focusing on trying to accomplish these different missions here. All of them have unique requirements, but they lead to certain stats that could lead to dealing more damage towards that specific boss, or even receiving less damage towards them, or even boosting overall potential rewards when you actually do defeat them. And all of these bosses really do have like unique requirements and rewards that you can unlock if you meet those specific goals. So keep that in mind as well, especially if you are struggling with a certain boss, because it could make or break specific fights and of course help your overall damage output. Next up, I did want to highlight the importance of inner ways, because we can basically utilize 4 different inner ways with our build to max out our overall damage output even further. There is a bit of an in-depth process on how you can get more of these different materials for each of the inner ways that you're looking for. I'm not going to highlight that in this video though, but I do have a guide for that. So click the link in the top right corner if you want to learn more about how you can really get more of these to max out the level of each inner way even further. I mean, this one, for example, I have already T4, and I'm just waiting to upgrade it to T5. I already have enough pieces too. And as you can see, a lot of these have direct impact on damage numbers, whether it's a critical hit or just damage over time effects or anything else in between. Each build really utilizes different ones, but I do recommend that you specialize on like 4 or 5 of them, because through the tips exchange process and recycling, you can just get more and more of the specific notes associated with each of these different inner ways. And the less that you are trying to upgrade, the more you can invest into each at the end of the day, leading to a higher tier, which ultimately leads to more effects and more damage output. These next 2 tips I'm going to cover are pretty obvious ones, however they are important, so I did want to do a quick call out, and that is under the gear section of develop. You want to make sure you enhance every single slot as much as you can. These are permanent stat increases. It's not like you're upgrading a specific weapon. You are upgrading the entire slot for that weapon permanently. So make sure you max out each of these slots as much as you can at all times, which will require some coins and some materials. If you do not have the specific materials, you can just click on where you can actually receive them, and on the mini map it will actually locate each of these ingredients where you can actually farm them very quickly and easily. The other very common kind of way to upgrade your damage output is of course through oddities. Throughout the world, you're going to be able to collect a handful of different unique items known as oddities. These are beehives or special like crickets or beetles or frogs that will allow you to essentially trade those items in for specific perks. This could lead to additional HP, can lead to additional physical attack, and realistically it can lead to overall damage output. In the first region, if you actually go all the way to the right and complete all these oddities, you will get a piece of a bell fragment where you can place it in a massive bell and basically debuff every single boss associated with the first region, which is honestly a game changer. So if you haven't already collected as many oddities as you can, then I highly recommend that you take the time to actually do so, because it can lead to massive stat boosts and just make your overall damage output even easier. So again, start grinding those oddities if you haven't already, because it's 100% worth it. The next thing I did want to call out is that certain mystic skills actually work really well together and can lead to even more damage output. So for example, Dragon's Breath right here will ignite the target and have a damage over time effect. But if you hit a target that is affected by ignition with Drunken Poet, it will inflict a bonus stack. So Drunken Poet is actually a whole different mystic skill. And if you are intoxicated, which you will be from Dragon's Breath, you'll be able to dish off these punches even faster. Plus, you'll have some explosion effects due to the ignition effect. So again, there's a handful of different skills that a lot of people don't realize actually work pretty well together. If you just go into the View More tab, you can kind of learn a little bit more. Even Lion's Roar can be affected by a target that was affected by Toad Venom, which is yet again a whole other mystic skill that could lead to even more damage. So it's worth playing around with these different mystic skills and seeing which combos you like the most, because it could lead to more damage output in the long run. And that really covers it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Again, this is kind of like a preview of some really important information that everyone in Where Winds Meet should know about. And I understand that some of this is pretty intro and beginner friendly, but it is important, so I did want to make sure I had a video highlighting all the different ways you can boost your damage output. Hope this was helpful, and stay tuned for some more Where Winds Meet content coming soon. Thanks again. Bye.